Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about uncertainty quantification in high-stakes AI models. And I want to open with a promise. By the end of this session, you'll be able to explain the difference between the two fundamental types of uncertainty a model can have, and you'll know which quantification method to reach for given your actual production constraints, not just the textbook answer. Here's the provocation I want to sit with for a second. A model can be 99% accurate on average and still be the most dangerous component in your system. Because average accuracy tells you nothing about whether the model knows when it's in that unlucky 1%. In medicine, autonomous driving, lending, and criminal justice, systems don't usually fail on the easy cases. They fail on the edge cases the model was never trained to recognize as edge cases. Uncertainty quantification is the discipline of making a model's confidence trustworthy, not just its point prediction. We'll walk through a mental model for the two kinds of uncertainty, 3 production-grade methods for estimating them, how teams actually monitor this in production, a real named case study, and where the frontier is heading with generative models. Let's start with why point predictions alone are structurally unsafe in these domains. So why is this a problem worth solving? The core failure mode is simple. A point prediction and a confident-sounding score tell you nothing about whether the model has ever seen a case like this one before. Modern neural networks are also, empirically, systematically overconfident. That's not speculation. It's a well-documented finding from the calibration literature. Softmax outputs get routinely misread as calibrated probabilities when they simply aren't. Think about what high stakes really means across a few domains. In clinical diagnosis, a missed low-confidence tumor read isn't a statistic, it's a life. In autonomous driving, a rare object misclassification at highway speed leaves no time to recover. In credit and lending, regulators require lenders to justify and bound their automated denials. And in criminal justice, risk scores influence bail and sentencing decisions. So overconfidence doesn't just create errors, it compounds existing bias. I want to ground this in something real. In 2018, a widely investigated autonomous vehicle fatality was traced by the NTSB back to a perception system that repeatedly reclassified the same object across categories, vehicle, bicycle, unknown, right before the collision, without that uncertainty ever escalating to a safe fallback behavior. That's epistemic uncertainty going unhandled, not at the model level, but at the systems level. So the question we need to ask isn't, is the model accurate? It's, does the model know when it's likely to be wrong? And does the system actually act on that signal? To answer that, we need a precise vocabulary for uncertainty. Let's build that next. Here's the single mental model the rest of this talk hangs on. Not all uncertainty is the same, and conflating the two types leads you to the wrong engineering effects. Aleatoric uncertainty is irreducible. It lives in the data. It's the noise baked into the process being measured. A coin flip, sensor jitter, a genuinely ambiguous X-ray, these stay uncertain no matter how much data you add. It's caused by measurement noise, label ambiguity, and class overlap, and you reduce it with better sensors or cleaner labels, not more data. Epistemic uncertainty is reducible. It lives in the model. It's the model's ignorance about regions of input space it has rarely or never seen. And this is exactly the uncertainty that shrinks as you collect more relevant data. It's caused by sparse training coverage and distribution shift, and you reduce it through more data, active learning, or better architecture. Total predictive uncertainty is the sum of both, and the engineering consequence here is direct. If your monitoring can't tell these two apart, you'll waste budget collecting more data to fix what's actually sensor noise. Or you'll ship a model assuming irreducible noise when the real problem is a training data gap you could have closed. In production, this distinction lets you route irreducible ambiguity to a fixed human review budget, while routing epistemic gaps into a continuous active learning loop. With this vocabulary in hand, let's look at the 3 production-grade families of methods engineers actually use to estimate this. There are 3 production-relevant ways to estimate epistemic uncertainty at inference time. First, Bayesian neural networks. Instead of treating every weight as a fixed number, you treat it as a probability distribution. Exact posterior inference is intractable for modern architectures, so in practice, teams use variational approximations, or the cheaper trick of Monte Carlo Dropout, repurposing dropout at inference time as an approximate posterior sample. You run several stochastic forward passes and look at the spread of the outputs. Second, deep ensembles. This sidesteps the intractable posterior problem entirely. Train several independently initialized models and treat the disagreement between their predictions as the epistemic signal. Empirically, this is often better calibrated than the Bayesian approximations, at the cost of running that many models at both training and inference time. Third, conformal prediction. And this one is qualitatively different because it doesn't touch model internals at all. Given any trained model and a held-out calibration set, conformal methods produce a prediction set with a provable, finite sample coverage guarantee. Something like the true label is in this set at least 90% of the time, without any assumptions about the data's distribution. That's why conformal prediction has become the default retrofit choice for teams that already have a production model and can't afford to retrain it as an ensemble. Most teams don't pick just one of these in isolation. A common pattern is a small ensemble for real-time epistemic scoring, with a conformal calibration layer on top that converts that raw uncertainty into a statistically guaranteed threshold a compliance team can actually sign off on. Let's see conformal prediction implemented end-to-end, since it's the lowest cost retrofit onto a model you already have running often.
Here's split conformal prediction in real shippable code. Let's walk it quickly. Calibrate takes a held-out calibration set, data never seen during training, and computes a nonconformity score per example, 1 minus the predicted probability of the true class, so confident correct scores near 0 and confident wrong scores near 1. It then takes a specific finite sample corrected quantile of those scores, the exact correction that gives this method its distribution-free coverage guarantee, from the conformal prediction theory developed by Vav, Gammerman, and Schaefer, and popularized for ML practitioners by Angelopoulos and Bates. Predict set then applies that single learned threshold at inference time, including every class whose score falls under it. Here's what that buys you. The underlying model is completely untouched. This works identically for a logistic regression, a gradient-boosted tree, or a fine-tuned transformer, as long as it exposes predict proba. 3 things worth remembering. Alpha controls the guarantee. 0.10 targets 90% coverage by construction. Calibration is the whole trick. Q-hat is a single quantile computed once, with 0 retraining, ever. And the output is a set, not a label. Its size is the uncertainty signal. One warning. The most common mistake is calibrating and evaluating on overlapping data, which silently breaks the guarantee. Your calibration set must be strictly held out. And this guarantee is marginal, not conditional. It holds on average, not for every subgroup, which matters for fairness audits. Now, how do these 3 methods compare when you have to choose one for production? Let's translate the 3 methods into a decision framework for your next design review. Inference cost. Bayesian networks need multiple stochastic forward passes at serve time, commonly 10 to 50, a real latency tax. Deep ensembles scale linearly with ensemble size and dominate GPU memory. Conformal prediction adds essentially 0 inference cost. It's a post-hoc lookup on outputs you're already computing. Retraining is often the deciding factor. A team with an already validated production model frequently can't justify retraining it as a Bayesian network or an ensemble, which makes conformal prediction the only retrofit-compatible option. Statistical guarantee is conformal prediction's genuine differentiator, the only one of the 3 with a provable, finite sample coverage bound, regardless of data distribution. That's the guarantee your compliance and legal teams can actually act on. And complexity tracks directly with how much of the pipeline each method touches: high, medium, low. A pattern repeated across large tech and healthcare companies: start with conformal prediction as the fast, low-risk retrofit, and only invest in ensembles or Bayesian architectures later if the conformal sets turn out too wide to be actionable. A guarantee on paper isn't the same as a well-behaved system in production, though. Let's look at how these are calibrated and monitored once they're live. Calibration drifts. You have to monitor it like any other production metric. Expected calibration error works like this. Bucket predictions by confidence, then compare each bucket's average confidence to its actual accuracy. A well-calibrated model's buckets sit right on the diagonal. Bars below it mean the model is systematically overconfident, exactly the dangerous direction for high-stakes use. A reasonable target: ECE below 0.03 for automated decisions, escalating to human review above 0.05. Both Bayesian methods and ensembles can drift out of calibration as live traffic moves from the training distribution, and conformal prediction's guarantee is only as fresh as your last calibration refresh. It's not permanent. It's conditioned on the calibration set staying representative. So operationally, recalibrate on a schedule, since drift silently invalidates your curves. Track coverage by segment, not just in aggregate. Marginal coverage can look perfect while a specific demographic is badly undercovered. Set an explicit abstention threshold, so wide prediction sets route to a human reviewer instead of an automatic decision. An alert on set size inflation. A sudden jump is often the earliest signal of distribution shift, showing up before accuracy even drops, with no ground truth required. Let's ground this in a real, named production deployment. Google Health's deep learning system for grading diabetic retinopathy from retinal photographs is one of the most thoroughly published examples of confidence-gated automation in medical AI, validated and deployed in real screening programs in Thailand and India. Here's the design choice that matters for us. The model doesn't just output a severity grade. It outputs a grade plus a confidence signal, and only images that clear a confidence bar get graded automatically. Images that don't clear that bar because of poor photo quality, borderline severity, or an unusual presentation get routed automatically to a human ophthalmologist rather than forced through automated grading. This converts an abstract model uncertainty number into a concrete operational decision, trading off three things at once: screening throughput, how many patients get same-day automated results; specialist workload, how many images need expert review; and patient safety, avoiding false reassurance on a genuinely ambiguous image. Interestingly, deployment studies in real screening camps found that image quality, not just diagnostic ambiguity, was a major driver of low-confidence cases. That finding led the team to add automated image quality gating upstream of the diagnostic model itself. It's a great example of how production uncertainty work often surfaces upstream data quality problems the modeling team never originally scoped. This case study used well-established methods on a discriminative model. The frontier now is applying that same discipline to generative and foundation models. The classical uncertainty toolkit was built for models with a fixed output space, a class label, a bounded number. That assumption breaks down for open-ended text generation, and that's where the field is moving now. First, selective prediction and abstention. The system is trained or wrapped to say, "I don't know," rather than hallucinate a confident, fluent, wrong answer. Critical for high-stakes generative use like clinical summarization or legal drafting, where fluent hallucination is far more dangerous than an honest admission of insufficient information. Second, conformal prediction for black box language models. Recent research adapts that same coverage guarantee to LLMs, scoring candidate outputs and building calibrated prediction sets, even through an API you don't control the weights of. Same core mechanism as our earlier code, applied to a harder output space. Third, semantic uncertainty. Token-level probability is a poor proxy for meaning. Two generations can look lexically different but mean the same thing. So instead, sample multiple generations and cluster them by whether they entail the same meaning. Tight clustering means the model reliably knows the answer. Wide dispersion means it doesn't, regardless of phrasing. Teams building high-stakes LLM assistants increasingly use a two-tier pattern. Cheap checks as a first-pass filter, escalating only flagged cases to expensive semantic clustering or conformal passes. The same cost-tiered pattern we saw in classical uncertainty quantification. Let's distill everything into principles to take with you. 5 heuristics to take with you. 1. Separate aleatoric from epistemic before you choose a fix. If the uncertainty is irreducible noise, more data won't help. Diagnose before you spend engineering budget. 2. Prefer conformal prediction as your default retrofit. It's the only method with a distribution-free guarantee that doesn't require retraining an already validated model. 3. Treat calibration as a live service-level objective, not a launch checkbox. Monitor expected calibration error and coverage by segment continuously. Drift silently invalidates guarantees made at ship time. 4. Remember that marginal coverage can hide subgroup failure. A guarantee that holds on average can still fail badly for a specific population. Audit conditional coverage, especially in regulated domains. And 5, the one that ties everything together. Uncertainty must trigger a system action, not just a number. A
confidence score nobody reads downstream is theater. Wire it to abstention, escalation, or a human review threshold. If I had to pick the single highest leverage thing anyone in this room could do this quarter, it's auditing whether your existing confidence score is actually consumed anywhere. Because in practice, it's astonishingly common to find it's computed, logged, and never acted on. For anyone who wants to go deeper, here's where to start.
A few places to go next. On papers, Angelopoulos and Bates' Gentle Introduction to Conformal Prediction is the best starting point for engineers, written for a machine learning audience with working code. Lakshminarayanan, Pritzel, and Blundell's Deep Ensembles paper and Gal and Gahramani's Monte Carlo Dropout paper are the two foundational references for the epistemic methods we covered. And Guo, Pleiss, Sun, and Weinberger's On Calibration of Modern Neural Networks is the short, readable empirical result that motivated our entire calibration monitoring discussion, worth assigning as a pre-read before anyone ships a confidence score into a product. On tooling, MAPI is the most actively maintained open-source conformal prediction library, and it integrates directly with scikit-learn pipelines. It's the fastest path from today's code slide to a real prototype. TensorFlow probability is the right starting point if you're committing to full Bayesian modeling. And Uncertainty Toolbox is useful specifically for the reliability diagram and calibration tooling we saw on the monitoring slide. My honest recommendation, start with MAPI on a model you already have running this week, rather than reading all 4 papers first. The fastest way to build intuition for calibration is to compute it on real, already deployed outputs. Let's close. Let's bring this full circle. A model that knows what it doesn't know is a fundamentally different kind of system, one you can actually trust in production. The path we walked today: separate aleatoric from epistemic uncertainty. Pick a method matched to whether you can retrain, Bayesian networks, ensembles, or need a fast retrofit with a formal guarantee, conformal prediction. Monitor calibration continuously, not just at launch. And most importantly, make sure the resulting number actually drives a downstream action. I'd love to open it up for questions. If it's helpful to start us off, how would you retrofit conformal prediction onto a model you already have in production? How do you explain a coverage guarantee to a non-technical stakeholder or a regulator? Or how does any of this change for multi-label or regression settings? I'm also happy to share the conformal prediction code from this deck as a working notebook afterward. People retain a lot more from a method they've run themselves. Thank you.